Welcome to the Echo Essentials Podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Today we speak with Dave Mendicino, and something very unusual. We're bringing him into banter, which is highly unusual. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by our good friends at Twiggs Coffee Roasters.
North Bay Echo is proud to partner with Twiggs Coffee Roasters, a part of the community since 1995. Twiggs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. Find your favorite specialty drinks at our espresso bar. Rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. And don't forget our irresistible fresh baked goods, including uncompromising gluten-free options. Twiggs has 5 locations to serve you, from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls to Sudbury. Order online for pickup at twigs.ca. And coming soon, you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay.
Well, welcome back. Dave Mendicino joins us for the banter, which is highly unusual. We don't usually invite anybody in for the banter, but I thought it might be appropriate because Dave knows a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to see if you're right.
So
I guess there's some doubt there.
Well, there's some things that I find it's like, why is this happening, and why can't it be fixed? And then I was thinking to myself, wait a second, did Al McDonald not run on that he was going to create left-hand lanes on Lakeshore Drive in West Ferris? I could have sworn you told me that.
Well, what I remember of that sort of napkin political platform, election platform that he had, was that he was going to build a road out to the highway from Marshall. He was going to look at that. I don't remember the left-hand lanes, but that could have been it.
I could have sworn we discussed. Do you remember anything?
I don't. This is no. I don't remember the left-hand lanes. Which election campaign was this?
I think it was the last one where
the last one, really,
where he was saying, yeah, and we're going to really look at punching out the road from Marshall to the bypass.
I think I remember something about that, highway. But I could have sworn in one of our conversations somewhere we talked about a left-hand turn lane on Lakeshore Drive, because I find going into the morning and sometimes coming home at night, why people choose to make a left-hand turn there when there's a left-hand turn back on Gertrude, but they'll make the turn right at Mitsubishi just past Gertrude. I'm like, you're backing up all the traffic. And then people making a left-hand turn if you're heading towards the overpass, and people making a left-hand turn lane into Timmy's. It's like, I actually go around the block. Every time if I'm going to Timmy's, I go around the block there. And so I'm not holding up the traffic.
When I'm heading down Lakeshore, heading towards Callender, and there's people in the left-hand lane going to McDonald's, that infuriates me.
Yeah, so it's that left-hand turn. Yeah, it's that left-hand turning thing.
I always have to look back and say, do you really need a hamburger? You don't look like you need a hamburger.
Judgy.
I mean, it
Can that ever happen, Dave? You were on council for many years.
Well, first off, it drives me crazy as well. You're going down there. I mean, I try and stay on the right all the time, but I do get stuck sometimes with someone wanting to turn left.
Yes.
There's been talk for years and years and years about, and it's actually, there's some kind of plan at the city with respect to building another lane on each side.
Really?
Yes.
So it can happen.
It can happen. All it takes is money, and as you know, you don't have 100% consensus with all the business owners on Lakeshore Drive, because if you do that, you're taking away some of their store frontage, right? It's city property, but you're taking away some of their store frontage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's always a political thing.
They're all right. They do it when there's a reason that they like. And this isn't a bad thing. Down on Lakeshore near Omichel, when you're approaching it, they're adding the lane there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's necessary because people are trying to turn left into a couple of stores there. That's a dangerous situation. So it's good that they're
that intersection definitely needs to be upgraded, especially with the community recreation center going there, and the casino now. I mean, that area of the city is the volume of traffic is increasing.
Then the higher priority, I believe, is Premier. They got to fix that. That's a go path. I know they put it off for a year and it's on the books, and they're going to.
They're designing it. which is a great. I mean, I was behind the scenes trying to get that project on the books. Is there's always other priorities, but
was that your biggest failure on council?
I don't.
I think it was the integrity commissioner, which we will be talking about in this episode when you're back in with us.
Oh my God, jeez. No,
but you know what? Dave Mendicino spent $50,000 to save us. What, $600,000?
It was a good
best
bet.
money you've ever spent. Dave.
I don't
best
know.
Money you've ever
I don't
spent.
know why you're putting a slant on it like that.
I just want people to listen to the next part of this podcast.
A little bit of fake news there.
Okay. All right.
Investment. Okay. My next thing is that didn't know it was happening, and I saw it when it was finished. Have you seen the new Kretzky building the old Kretzky building, right? They've painted the whole thing, and there's art on it. It looks incredible what they've done.
I haven't seen it yet.
It looks. I saw it.
You saw it?
It looks amazing. In fact, I made a point of driving by almost every day until it was done because you get to see the artist.
Yeah,
actually doing it in real time.
Was it a local artist? Do you know?
I don't know if it was a local artist.
It's beautiful.
Probably hazard a guess to say it would have been, but kudos to the owners for doing that.
CMHA.
No, the owners are.
Isn't that the building block?
Yeah,
the building block group.
Yeah,
it was their idea.
It's their building, and it was. I'm assuming it was their idea. The tenant in there is Canadian Mental Health Association, and in my opinion, they've turned. There was a lot of media about that area with respect to homeless people hanging out in the parking lot on Fraser Street.
Yeah,
right beside the building. And, there was a lot of negative talk there about that. And in my opinion, they've kind of tried to beautify that area, which is awesome.
I'm not going to throw any stones at hanging out on Fraser Street. That's where I met my wife coming out of the Fraser Tavern. I just stand there with two arms, and she came out at 2 a.m. That's her.
Really?
She's mine. And we've been together ever since.
How romantic.
I know. Well, who hasn't been romantic at the Fraser Tavern? Raise your hand. Come on.
Who hasn't?
Oh, who has? Come on, Dave.
I think
Dave,
I think there's one.
The Fraser Tavern is a place of romance.
Way back when.
Well, it's a place of romance. I don't care what people say. Who hasn't had romance at the Fraser Tavern?
I never called it romance at the time, but I understand what you're saying.
Not. Final thing before we get into the interview where Dave does some interesting math, spending $50,000 to save us $100,000. The whole minutes thing, I know I pushed back at you last time about the minutes piece and why it's important to have a transcript of what went on. But I think I might
A summary. We already have transcripts. But
well, it was interesting. There was something that came out just recently in the news because I love 60 Minutes. I always watch 60 Minutes every week. And they interviewed the vice president running for president, Kamala Harris, right? And someone discovered in this day and age, that the whole interview was, and one of her answers wasn't used because it was used. One was used on like on Twitter, and then a clip was used over here, and someone sleuth figured out, wait a second, that's the full answer. It wasn't aired. And 60 Minutes hasn't released the full transcript. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. They've come out to say, look, and you would know this from editing, they call it something. Well, to make it flow better, we had to edit a couple of things, right? And it's like, well, wait a second. Are you editing to make them sound better? Is it like, how is the editing taking place?
So are they putting it together in bits and pieces?
Well, it's like they take bits and pieces out. I think that happens in any broadcast, right? When they're doing things. But let me ask you as a journalist, how much editing is done to make someone sound better or make them more coherent?
That's an excellent question, Scott. No, I'm just kidding. I love when politicians do that. They're trained to. There's always the constraints of time and space, right?
Right.
So for TV, mainstream, definitely you have allotment of time to get something in. We do it all the time here to try to make, for example, our podcasts that we do for Kojiko, we make them fit 28. We cut it where we cut it. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see the full thing, it's over here. There's plenty that I've edited out of many stories because they didn't fit and they weren't relevant or a priority, right? Now, there's been some issues with the U.S. political election campaign coverage where there was inappropriate editing. The Joe Rogan interview, for example, and he's suing over that because they rejumbled his stuff and made him say something he didn't say.
Right.
And then there's something like this. I'm not as familiar with this particular example as you are, but I could see somebody editing out part of an answer because they feel that it was already answered here, and they may have been wrong. They may have been very important that there was a nuance in the second section that was edited out that brought the answer together. There's errors made in editing.
So going to the minutes question, and Dave's here because Dave sat on council for many years, because the minutes aren't robust in any way, shape, or form, but they're videotaped. But not all meetings are videotaped. So how can you get up to speed, or how is there record of what happened in that meeting? Or is there any more? I don't know who I posed that to, Dave or Dave.
I've been out of it for 2 years. I don't know. I really have not kept up to speed with how they're keeping minutes today. But my understanding was, and you're right, not all the meetings are videotaped. If they are videotaped, to me, that's a form of minutes.
That makes sense to me. Would you be happy if everything was videotaped?
I would be happy if there's a recording of all meetings, but I would need annotated transcripts that would allow me to find what I'm looking for. And I'm not even sure if I used the word annotated properly there.
That's all right. Too big for me too.
I would like timestamps on topics so that it would be easier for the public or somebody researching to find what they're looking for. You can sort of do that if you take the extra steps. If there's a video, you can get a transcript, and then you can do keyword searches. But then you have, like, say there's 10 people trying to do it, and they're all wasting their time doing the same thing.
Right.
So you're paying a bureaucracy to do the job. Expand on the job just one more or two more steps so that it's easier to go back and research.
And maybe it's, again, I've been out of it for 2 years, but maybe it's a work in progress. Maybe this is what you're just saying. Maybe that's where they've got to get to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think by bringing some light to the issue of disappointment in the minutes gives them the idea that, okay, maybe this is a useful tool. Maybe we can improve it. And whether or not it's much extra cost, I don't think it would be in this day and age with the technology involved, but it should be in the process, I think.
Funny, you're talking about editing in and editing out. It's kind of like what happened with Invest North Bay. You're editing in, editing out to create another story that didn't actually happen.
What are you talking about?
See more fake news.
We get into that. We get into Invest North Bay in this interview. And we talk about the integrity commissioner, and we have a
code of conduct, and a little bit about the town hall, the need for town halls to be very open, just like council passed and Sarah Inch's motion to allow staff in the city. I mentioned it earlier, to look at ways of making them better.
But was that I noticed it was the 2 out of the 9-2 that put that forward.
I think it's their 9-2 record is blown out of the water. They have one of their motions was accepted.
How could you have said no to that motion?
Well, that's the thing.
Would that have been a hard one to say no to?
Well, the thing is about those motions, and when you end up in a situation like Jamie and Sarah and a few others are in, is that you got to come up with a motion that they can't say no to. You have to word it in a way that's
just smart
what's that
politics.
Accomplish? Other than you can't say no, so you vote yes. Has that got them off the island? Are they still 9-2 on most issues?
They're in a raft at the edge of the wharf, and they're leaving the island. They've figured out a way to get something passed.
The raft has a hole in it.
Well, listen to Tom Sawyer here.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
I really like it, Dave. Oh, that's good. You don't think they'll ever get back to shore?
No, I don't. I don't. They're halfway through their term. and I'm just going by from what I've seen in the past. Usually, that once you cast that stone, once you cast that mold, and it's tough to get off that island.
Really, eh?
It's going to be tough.
But here's a real quick thing, and I'm drafting up a column on it. I saw that Maggie Horsfield's reinvigorating her newsletter, and it's at the halfway point of the term. And in my mind, that kicks off the election campaign when you get enter your third term, because that's when you actually do the most work, because you have some experience and you know the lay of the land, and you're not going to wait till the fourth term because nothing gets done, right? So
Well, I mean, I like to hit the ground running during year one. It's amazing how those years fly. Here again, maybe it speaks to what we were saying earlier about it's tough to catch up later on in the term. Once you start your third term, there's a lot of initiatives that have been started. There's a lot of initiatives.
Third year, yeah.
But it takes time to get to the point where you're actually doing something. I mean, there's a lot of planning and you want to get something done on council. You need 6 people, 5 other people to support you. Mm-hmm. And
I salute Maggie's effort, though, because she's going to talk about meetings beforehand and afterwards, and put her name to how she explains things. I think all the councillors should do something like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Last question, Dave. You grew up here in the city. Who was a councillor, maybe when you were young, maybe more recent, that you went, gosh, they're awesome. I want to be like them. I want to be. Who would have been who?
The only way I can answer that is because I never had any interest in politics until Mike Harris got in office, and
what made it change when he got into office?
I liked the way he spoke. I like what he said. He did what he said. Some of his decisions weren't popular, but he did it. He made them because he committed to making them, and
common sense resolution.
Well. Which
was probably one of the greatest.
I think we see 2.0 coming up with the federal common sense.
More waste, because you know how much it cost to go back and fix what Harris did.
Anyways, you didn't make this. You didn't ask it as a. You asked, again.
Yeah. Who?
Yes, and as in politics, for me, it was Mike Harris.
Who was never a councillor, right?
Who was never. Who was on the
school board.
I mean, I can tell you way back when I was a kid, the councillor that I enjoyed was Bob Wood.
That was before my time. Yeah.
John C. Hopper.
Yeah. I think Hopper was just getting off as I arrived.
Yeah.
And it was only because I did his retirement and I read his background. But Don King, Mark's father, he was like at that time he was the mayor of Whitfield, so the city hadn't even amalgamated. And some of the stuff he used to do to poke the city of North Bay in the eye, I just loved. When the city was making it hard for a business to open up, he actually went and got a bulldozer from his public works and he plowed over some land and he goes, "Here's your spot right here." And they moved to Whitfield. I don't know what the business was, but I went, oh yeah, that's old school and awesome at the same time.
Sometimes you got to love old school, don't you?
Yeah. And what about Daphne Main? I didn't know, I don't know Daphne Main, but was she she seemed like such a powerful businesswoman.
I don't remember much about Daphne. I know she was a long-serving councillor, but she was never really on my radar.
I remember seeing her at council in the late 80s, and she was well-respected and had a strong voice, of course, a woman business leader in town. Yeah.
It was, and won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but it was a different time where we actually respected councillors. I think as a city, and not that I shouldn't say I'm making it sound like we don't now, but I don't think city councillors get the same respect as those councillors did back then.
I would call it more, because I've read some stuff from the 70s and 60s, I would say the public was more apt to be amused by the councillors than respect them necessarily.
Interesting take.
So right now, we're not amused, we're pissed if they don't meet our expectations.
Interesting. Just before we get into the interview, Dave, I want to thank one of our sponsors, and that is Voyager Aviation. We always say that they were founded in 1968, but I want to acknowledge one of the things that they're doing, because not only are they hiring for a lot of people, and probably one of the larger employers in the area. They have over 400 people. It's a big operation, right? But one of the things they have is Pathway Bursaries program with Canada College. And so actually one of the things they do, if any young people are looking to get into, aircraft maintenance and all the different, facets that they have in aviation, they have this Pathway Bursary program through Canada. So 6 students locally in our area are able to apply for it. And not only do they get their education paid for, they're guaranteed a summer job, and then they have full-time employment at the other end of it. I go, that's a pretty cool program. So you don't have to pay for any of that. They look after it all, and just contact Canada College to find out more information on it. And if you want to find out how you can be involved with Voyager Aviation, they got lots of jobs. You can learn about all sorts of different positions they have open in career pathways. Simply go to voyav.com to get more information. And thank you, Voyager, for being one of our proud sponsors.
Okay, well, hold it. Before we go any further, I'm going to put on my Sportscast hat.
Oh.
I want to plug the thing we're doing with, I'm co-hosting with Paul McLean. We're doing Echo Sportscast, and it starts off with high school sports. We have an interview in the middle with somebody involved in making sports happen in the city. And then we finish off with non-high school sports, club, varsity stuff. Mm-hmm. And then a heritage moment. Yeah, it's coming together. We've done 5 so far. We're starting to get a little bit more uptake. And I actually, if you check out the number 5, we have a really cool endorsement from one of the coaches. He really loves it, and he explains why.
That's great. Okay, make sure you tune in. How do I get to tune into the Echo Sportscast?
Well, if you can get the links when I do the newsletter, the Echo newsletter, and you just go to our northbayecho.ca website, go to the Echo shows, and it's right there with all the other network members.
Okay, let's get into the interview with Dave Mendicino.
We have Dave Mendicino here. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Nice to have you. What have you been up to, Dave?
What have I been up to? I'm
getting bored already. Okay, let's get the first
Former
question.
counselor. That's all you need to know.
There you go.
But a question I need to know, and this is the cultures. Like one day, my hope is that I'll be able to retire. So when you retire, how do you get a seat at a coffee table? Because I've heard stories that you vote people out. There's these different coffee tables at different places where people go to. So I usually just come over and sit down sometimes, but I don't think you're allowed to do that, right? Don't you have to be voted in?
Well, you don't have to be voted in to sit down, but if the group doesn't want you sitting down, then you're definitely given some kind of sign that one way or
Really?
another. Yes.
This happens all. Do coffee like?
From my experience, they get up and leave.
You've sat down and people got up and left.
Yeah. Actually, at the tail end of their little meetings, and I come over and, hey, can I sit down? Hey, sure.
And then they leave.
Well, you're there for about 45 minutes, an hour. You get all your business in, and away you go.
Yeah,
we do have a chair. Our chair is Terry Vendetti. He's the chair.
There's an actual chair?
Well, he's the chair.
So what does the chair do at a coffee table meeting?
Well, sometimes he needs to, bring discussions back into line, because some of us get out of line sometimes, stuff like that.
Do tables ever go, hey, we would like to join together to have a larger discussion? Because there's usually 2 or 3 tables in these coffee shops.
Well, so they never join. Sometimes they do join up, not the whole table, but if one of those 2 from the other table, like there is another table over there, the Dong Young, Mike Longs of the world, that table over there. We don't usually join up all together, but sometimes a few of us intermingle for sure.
Okay, last question about coffee tables. I just learned on Facebook, is it Mike Long became a Canadian citizen? He wasn't a Canadian citizen?
Mike Long, so Mike Long was not a Canadian citizen. He could not vote. He was been here, 40 years, 45?
Really? I did not know that. What, is he American? Was he American?
British.
British.
Mike Long is British. He's from Britain. Yeah.
So he was born there, came here, and
like 40, 50, I don't know how many years. A long time
did
ago.
not know that.
And he just became a Canadian citizen.
I saw it on Facebook. I go,
Yeah.
Mike Long's not a Canadian citizen.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he's Canadian through and through.
Yeah, exactly. He is. Yeah.
I have one more coffee
Yeah.
thing. Has anybody ever come in and there was like people had to separate people? There was any fights? Anything?
Not.
See, Dave asks questions when he knows what the answer is, and he's trying to get you to say something.
Not in any
It's
time.
called a loaded question.
Yes, not at any time that I was present.
That's
good
well
answer.
done. Well done.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So we're here today because we wanted to talk a little bit about the integrity commissioner, what's going on. Dave, you came across a story. I think it was in Sioux Today, or it was someone from Sioux Today wrote an article about should we even be having these integrity commissioners anymore?
It's from a Phenom conference. So
Okay.
it was like actually the mayors of Northern Ontario were like, you say, hey, this is getting a little out of hand. You know?
So when you say how is it getting out of hand? If we're holding people accountable when it comes to integrity and people are coloring outside the lines and, why is it getting out of hand?
Well, my read it was that it's inconsistent. Some commissioners seem to get really serious and spend a lot of time and cost a lot of money to deal with an issue. Others work a little bit differently. There's different rules depending on the councils. There's no just one set of rules for what can be done as far as trying to have an investigation started. So there's no blanket rule for all the municipalities follow. So they each have their own code of conduct, right?
Okay.
So it's a hodgepodge, and then you have different personalities, and there are some commissioners that, or people tabbed because other commissioners are in conflict. So others get the chance to do it, and it's inconsistencies. Some are more career-oriented, and they really want to roll up their sleeves and cost a lot of money, and others don't. And some are really better than others, right? You pick one as your commissioner, but they can't always do that particular investigation. So they have to get from another pool that you don't know about. There's been a couple instances in North Bay that's happened.
I've only seen, and again, me on the outside just reading, it's the integrity commissioners. It seems like anytime there was some sort of integrity commissioner request, they would always have to recuse themselves. I'm going, I don't think the integrity commissioner's ever done anything because the integrity commissioner recuses themselves all the time and has to go to two other people. It's like in a small town, I guess everybody knows everybody, and
especially if somebody's connected to an active law firm with client base,
right?
When there's still some confidentiality and some conflict that could have been sort of associated, and then that's going to get costly, right? Mm-hmm. So I like the one quote, I can't remember who it was in there. It was just like, well, who's policing the integrity commissioners? Like, what is the protocol for, this one's not good, we don't want them anymore, or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Dave Mendicino is no stranger to the integrity commissioner. That doesn't sound good that way it came out.
We'll have to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we will explain
he's
that
well
a little
versed
bit.
on the code of conduct.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
I like that. There you go.
So what's your view on it, Dave?
Well, Dave's bang on with the issues that Phenom. So these were northern mayors, basically, right? Coming together and saying that there is inconsistency within the province, and the inconsistency comes from each municipality has their own integrity commissioner. So, you've got one code of conduct, or you've got a code of conduct, or an issue that's could be investigated one way by a certain integrity commissioner, another way by another integrity commissioner. So there is a inconsistency that somehow needs to be dealt with. They're asking for a more standard set of rules or something when it comes to integrity commissioner. Each municipality hires their own integrity commissioner.
Are they mandated to do that?
Yes, under when you indicated, Dave, that each municipality they do it, they develop their own code of conduct, but every code of conduct is developed within the structure of the Municipal Act, the Ontario Municipal Act. So they're while there is some variation, the bulk of it is the same. Whether you're a councillor in North Bay or a councillor in Toronto, you still have to conduct yourself, in my opinion anyways, under a certain code of conduct. And then the municipalities will fine-tune that, any way they see fit.
So I think as a taxpayer, we all agree, like, okay, this sounds like it should take place. It should be something that's, embedded in our municipality. What is at its core why mayors through Phenom are pushing back on it?
So it definitely has a place. It definitely needs to. There needs to be some structure. Any city councilor or mayor needs to be held accountable for his or her actions. Mm-hmm. But the issue starts to become the last term of council, I saw this thing explode, whereby it's not just obviously councillor on councillor. We didn't see any of that. I've never seen that in any of my time on council, but the public started, lodging complaints with the integrity commissioner, and some of those complaints started taking the form of, I don't like a certain councillor, or I don't like the interaction I had with a certain councillor, and they start looking for ways to go after that individual. And the integrity commissioner is a perfect forum to do it, because it's a public forum that the public can. And I saw that explode in a way that you've got a municipality like Elliott Lake. They got into a whole whirlwind. And it seems like the smaller the city or the town, the more whirlwind this can create, because everyone knows each other even more.
Yeah, they all went to high school together.
Right.
And
when you make it personal, that's when you start seeing municipalities like Elliott Lake. And if my memory does not serve me, and it's not Elliott Lake, it's a city the same size.
Elliott Lake had some issues and spent a lot of money on
in 2021, over $300,000 on integrity commissioner and integrity. Well, where did the fee come from? Well, every time you lodge a complaint with the integrity commissioner, the integrity commissioner, the first thing is it deemed frivolous. If it's deemed frivolous, it's set aside. If it's deemed that there's an investigation warranted, investigation is warranted, but no bad behavior was found. Or you do an investigation, and yes, I found some code of conduct violations, and here's what they are. Those all start adding up. Every time the integrity commissioner is engaged at $600 an hour, taxpayer money. And I experienced it firsthand with the Judge Vallon and an investigation of Invest North Bay. And I've been on record as saying it was frivolous, and it should not have cost the taxpayer of North Bay what it cost.
Frivolous?
Judge Vallon erred in his ruling that Invest North Bay was a local board. If he would have determined that it was not a local board, instead of getting a bill from him for $50,000, we would have gotten a bill for him for maybe $5,000.
Yeah, but the word frivolous is probably not appropriate. Well, I don't think it was a frivolous.
Maybe frivolous was
not. That's all.
Maybe it warranted. You're right. Maybe it warranted. I don't know. I've got my.
It was a question I had too.
So maybe yes. So it did warrant some investigation, but he erred in his ruling, and again, instead of determining right at the beginning, it was not a local. Invest North Bay was not a local board. So thereby, they do not have to follow rules and regs of a local board, like posting meetings and making all the meeting public and all that stuff. Invest North Bay was set up specifically for a reason to not be a local board, because the private individuals that were on that board at the time wanted it that way, because they didn't want their business spewed all over the front page of the media or anything like that. It was specifically set up that way, that it was not a local board. Whether anybody agrees with that or not, that reality is that's the way council set it up back in 2017.
Who was mayor at the time? Which council was that?
Mayor McDonald, Al.
Mayor McDonald?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But you know, it's because I actually read that report and I'm shocked because it was such a big deal. I'm shocked how few people actually read the report. Because everybody seems to know the story, but very few people read the report. But what's interesting with it, I find that you it feels like you're skipping over a bit. Because you're saying the issue was that whether it's a board or not a board, right?
That was one of the issues.
Well, it's core to whether it should have been dismissed or not.
Right.
But when you read that report, the amount of money, taxpayer money, that shifted into a closed door session that had some serious points about conflict of interests within that board, and they had the complete autonomy to spend it over $1 million of taxpayer money. And they were not held accountable for that. And so that, to me, is what it was all about. You're talking about boards, but when I read the report, I'm like, okay, this doesn't look good. Even though I think in the report, what came out of it, Judge Fallon said, look, none of this can really be proved at the end of the day. But man, it did not. That report did not look great.
Well, again, that report to me was it should never have made the light of day. It should have stopped when he should have determined that it was not. And he ended up our own acting integrity commissioner agreed with my opinion that it was not a local board. It shouldn't have cost the taxpayer $50,000. And as far as what came out of that report, at any time, if you want to go through it, and I could dispute most of the stuff that was in there. So, conflict of interest, you can. Again, I was not there when all this was put together. I came after. I sat on Invest North Bay from 2018 to 2022, after it had been created, after the contract with TWG had been issued. So I'm sitting there going, okay, what's going on? Trying to get up to speed with everything. I mean,
I think we should look at because when we talk about money being spent unnecessarily, I think it was actually there was too much money spent to get to the bottom of the reality is that trying to create an arm's length body that's not accountable to the public and giving them money to spend is a bad idea.
That board
and
that
they
entity,
didn't necessarily function like they should have.
That entity was accountable to city council. That entity was accountable to city council. The $1 million that city council approved to give to that entity, city council is accountable to that $1 million.
Was the city trying to figure out whether that was a good deal with that contract and that there was no conflict, or was that only a concern after people brought it up? Because it was actually, from what I can remember, one of the board members was leaking out the information, and he wasn't happy with the way things went. So it's a good example of an integrity commissioner not coloring inside the lines that they should, but it's not necessarily a great example of the need for it, because they discovered something that a lot of people thought was not appropriate as far as dealing with public money.
The reason I brought it up was because it was my experience with the integrity commissioner, where there's a waste of taxpayer monies spent on the integrity commissioner, because like you said, inconsistencies. Another integrity commissioner would have looked at this and erred and decided correctly that it was not a local board. Stop there. Bill the city of North Bay for $5,000. This integrity commissioner erred and said it was a local board and billed us for $50,000. That's the inconsistency that's within the system. I mean, within Invest North Bay, again, I can tell you when I came on there in December of 2018, all this had been created, the contract had been vetted, and sure, you're looking at it and you're going, okay, well, you're starting to ask questions. And yes, we did have a board member that, should not be leaking stuff, but was.
Hi, I'm Natasha Laframboise, sales representative with the Laframboise team at Realty Executives Local Group Inc. Brokerage. We are a local real estate team here in North Bay. Our team of sales representatives, Matt Laframboise, Phil Seguin, and Adam Legros, are ready to help you through the buying and selling experience. We have been providing service to the North Bay and area community for over 17 years. Our goal is to provide knowledge, support, and guidance in order to prepare your home for sale, bring it to market using multiple selling strategies, and get it sold. As a home buyer, we have 2 buyer's agents ready to help you find your home sweet home. If you'd like to know more, check us out on our website, laframboiseteam.ca. We are always happy to help.
Not to belabor it too much, because there's a couple more points in the current situation as far as code of conduct and who can initiate a complaint. I like that story about out of Sudbury saying that not necessarily an anonymous accusation would be kept anonymous, or it won't go forward unless it's substantiated. I like that. But as far as this one goes, we can split hairs on the words like frivolous and waste of money, because it actually, when you look at $50,000 compared to $600,000 that end up coming back to the city coffers, or how much came back?
How much came back to the city
when the contract was ended, and there was money left on the table that the city got to keep instead of spending in a way that some people think wasn't getting results, right? So,
you mean when Invest North Bay was kind of wound down sort of thing? Yeah, there was about 600. One doesn't have anything to do with the other.
I know, but when we're talking about words like waste of money.
Yeah, waste of money.
If I can spend 50 to save 600, I might do it.
How do you figure you spend 50 to save 600? One has nothing to do with the other, I'm telling you.
Well, the uproar over the...
Yeah, why? Let me ask you this. If that money was being used how it's supposed to be used, and the board felt like, yeah, we're totally committed to this and this contract and everything that we've done, why did it end? Why wouldn't we have kept marching forward to grow the city? Because it was really based on, a plan to, invigorate the economy of the city. Why would it have been ended?
There's a clause in the contract that allows exit, right?
Yeah. So why was it exited?
Well,
I think the motivation,
right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're right. The motivation that triggered the clause came from the mess of the investigation that...
Absolutely not.
Come on, Dave.
Nope.
Better explain it better for me.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Me too.
Well, I think what ended up happening with the board using the exit clause to exit the contract would have happened whether this investigation was there or not. It had nothing to do with it.
It had nothing to do with the investigation.
Maybe the two things were running in parallel at the time.
It's possible.
And you would not know because it
wasn't a public meeting.
Exactly. and
it comes around.
And no one's breaking any rules because City Council of the day in 2017 set it up that way. I mean, you can argue whether it was a board, you agree it's a local board or not. My contention is I'm sitting on a board that City Council has created. And it's been deemed not a local board because that's the way the private business people wanted it. So I'm going to be governed by those rules.
Well, that's cool.
When I sit on that board.
I think even Al McDonald, if he was sitting right here, would agree that even though he thought it was a good decision then, probably in hindsight figures, like many other communities, that trying to create these ECDEV boards as an arm's length away and giving them money to play with didn't work out for everybody.
You are bang on. And it was created because of some examples that were seen in other communities, like Guelph. So
the successes, but then
Guelph did not have
the failures.
No, I don't even know if they had initial successes, Guelph, because they may have had one or two, but again, there was. And at the end of the day, there was a lot of failures.
I think we agree.
So this board was created based on all good intentions, all the right. We want to grow the city. We want to do this. Here's a way to do it. No one else on council during that 2014-2018 term of council was coming up with any other ideas to grow the city. So this was put on the table, and this is what they decided to do.
It very interesting, and I'm not sure if this is funny or not, but I believe part of the strategy was to bring up Toronto money of East Indian origin to invest in North Bay, and that's already happened.
Well, again,
maybe because of this, right? I don't know.
Well.
We got about 10 minutes left.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, this is cool. What important points do you think people should consider about the code of conduct, who can launch a complaint, and what changes you can make to Integrity Commissioner system to make it better?
I read the article with what FNOM is, and again, FNOM, Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities. I hope I'm right. I agree with what more, and we've said it. There's got to be more consistency. Mm-hmm. There's got to be more. You can't have the same issue in two municipalities being looked at by one integrity commissioner, and they're charging $20,000, and another integrity commissioner in another municipality looks at the same issue and is charges $5,000. There's got to be more consistency.
They'll end up consistently $20,000 somehow, I think.
Well, but the frivolous part, there has to be some. I think you're going to see more and more of what we didn't even talk about what Sudbury is.
Yeah, the anonymous thing,
right? Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, they're fighting back. They're saying
who's fighting back?
The council. Some have been. Hit with what they personally deem to be frivolous accusations against by people that have a personal issue with them, and they're saying we've got to somehow try and curb this. So we want from here on in, when a complaint is lodged, we want to know who's lodging the complaint, and this is where they pass a motion basically to that in that regard. But now you've got their integrity commissioner saying, well, wait a minute. You don't get to decide that, city council. I do as your integrity commissioner because I'm the one that's looking at it and looking at the Municipal Act. If I deem that a complainant should remain anonymous, that's my call. So again, you've got the municipality of Sudbury butting heads with the integrity commission who they have hired on this issue. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, again, having sat in the chair, I think there has to be a little bit of pushback.
It's from who? By the council?
Yeah, because hey, we're all human, and this I've seen how
because it's being weaponized, right?
It has been weaponized, and I see how it weighs on an individual on council personally, how it weighs on you that you're being investigated, and you're being asked legal questions. You're going out having to hire a lawyer to protect yourself. So I've seen how that weighs on you.
Dale, we had Tanya in here, and you know this far better than I do, but I think what Dave's talking about here is I think I saw it on her face. Like she's so afraid to speak. Is that tied to what Dave's talking about here too? Like about being sued and having lawyers and,
A little bit. Not quite. I think her situation was a little bit different because she was facing a threat of a lawsuit from a an individual, and he wasn't going through the integrity commissioner part. He was just going straight to a potential libel suit. And that, obviously worried her. And because of her position on council, she didn't feel like she was get the same support as a chosen one, as somebody who was in the fold. So you need the staff and the other councillors to kind of agree about whether or not the city lawyer is going to represent you on certain things, right?
Yeah. So
there's some issues there as well. I think they're a little bit different, but not much. But the code of conduct in those investigations, and I wanted to ask you, well, is there an example of when somebody can do that anonymously?
File a complaint with the integrity commissioner?
Yeah, that you feel would be justified to be anonymous. Because I don't believe in anonymous complaints myself.
Oh, no?
No.
Interesting.
I don't believe in anonymous complaints to the integrity commissioner, but if the person that's there has to be, the integrity commissioner has to use some discretion. If that person is saying, I don't want anybody to know, well, there has to be some discretion there on by the integrity commissioner whether he informs the council member. There has to be some protection, but I don't know. I guess it's.
Does this differ from whistleblower kind of autonomy?
Well, whistleblower legislation protects, say, a city staffer who wants to make a complaint.
Right.
Right. So they're not necessarily anonymous. Maybe the integrity commissioner keeps them anonymous, but they are protected if they go a different route through the whistleblower, I believe.
I'll give you an example of an issue that a councillor should be pushing back on. So, someone files a complaint against a council member, and the integrity commissioner deems I'm going to investigate it. There's a full investigation. It costs whatever amount of money it costs. When the council member gets a heads up from the integrity commissioner on hey, this is what's going on, it's a briefing. It's a briefing on what's going on, and here's what I'm finding and all that stuff. If you're being accused of something, should you not see the whole investigation? Would you not want to see the whole investigation?
Well, for sure.
Just little things like that need to be tweaked within the system.
But you wouldn't, if you were the one being accused, you couldn't have access to the whole investigation?
The person lodging the complaint gets to make the call on whether it's made public or not.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not so sure I support that.
I absolutely do not support that. I mean, you're being accused. You want to know. I don't want just a little briefing on what your findings are or what I'm being accused of. Because I have to now defend myself. And how am I going to defend myself if I don't know the whole picture? Like these are the little things that need to be tweaked within the system. We need to make sure council members uphold the code of conduct. So the system needs to be in place, but it needs to be tweaked in few areas.
Very quickly, I just wanted to touch upon last night's council meeting with the town hall thing. Sarah Inch had a motion that was unanimously adopted that would direct staff and the lawyer to look at the rules and try to open it up town halls for people to speak. But one thing that grabbed me in the story that I read in the Nugget about that was that Sarah was saying that town halls may be an easier place for people to be able to go and speak because at city council, she said that it's recorded and it's videotaped, and that's some people might not want to do that. And there's some type of expectation in a town hall for privacy, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with anybody coming up and speaking to council anonymously. So the rationale for the town hall as opening it up isn't so that it's not public and that people can't videotape it. It should be videotaped. Town hall should be videotaped.
The very words town hall
is public.
It's a public.
So let's get all this straight here, guys. We want it to be public. We want transparency. People should be able to pose questions to council without having them screened beforehand. And they have to be accountable for what they say. And they have to do it in a civil manner. So there's rules for that. But I think they should be able to have an opportunity to do it in a proper manner. And if they don't, well, then they lose their right. But individually, not as a rule for everybody. That's my opinion. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, town halls, definitely serve a purpose, and there's rules and regs in place on how they're conducted. If this council feels that they need to open that up a little bit, well, so be it. That's fine. I mean, I don't know. I've never, someone wants to get up there and speak their mind, they can speak their mind. If there has to be some decorum in place, there has to be some kind of boundaries, if you will, or you're going to be there till 2:00 in the morning. So, everyone, should be able to say their piece. And if there are direct questions, whether they're dealt with on the spot or whether they're dealt with after or even before, in some cases. Submit your questions before. As long as they're dealt with.
Got it.
I'm good with that.
I had this opportunity to get certified in IAP2, which is the International Association of Public Participation, where they actually, this is where they train people to do public meetings. And I was fascinated once I got into it about that, how different meetings are structured in a different way to allow different things to happen. So as soon as you say town halls are like, within this industry, are designed for people to empty their bucket. And one of the best people I've seen doing a town hall is Vic Fideli. And he knows how to use it properly. So I've seen before he was in as MPP, he would go, and I think at that time it was electricity rates. He said, bring your electricity bill to this. And we'll do a town hall. It was at the Legion at the time. And people would get up and they would, air their frustrations. And he had a flip chart and he would write things down. He says, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fight for you. He was MPP, but he wasn't in power at the time.
Right.
And it was like the perfect setting to allow people to empty their bucket. I think what you're saying about, absolutely, there has to be a level of decorum within it. And I think there's simple ways of setting it up, saying, look, we're having an open mic. Councilors can ask questions back of the person who's speaking, and we're going to allow the last person to ask their question at 15 minutes before closing, which is whatever the time is, 7:45 or 8:45, whatever the number is. So you can, if it's an open mic, at least everybody knows if you're lined up, it's only this one that gets this far, right? And then I've moderated those before as well. It just allows like a time so people can empty their bucket and put it out there. I think it's important to allow the public to air their frustration, and not so much in the cloak of social media, where it can get really, really vile, right? Allow people, someone who has the passion to stand up in public and speak their mind, they need to be heard. And they're echoing the voice of, pardon the pun, of so many other people in the community. No matter, even if it is a small majority or small minority rather, they're echoing that voice. So there's ways of approaching it.
And from a, just for myself, personal level, I never felt that I always felt like I was accessible and the public had access to me one way or another, whether it was at a council meeting, whether it was at a public meeting for a rezoning, whether it was pick up a phone, whether it was email, each councilor there should be accessible to the public in a lot more forms than just a town hall. Right?
Interesting. Good topic.
This has been another Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Make sure you go to northbayecho.ca, sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done that, and check out our other shows. Lots of great ones. To North Bay with Love. Backroads Bill does this whole thing on the Bud car, which if you haven't done it, you need to get on the Bud car. And it's not what you're thinking, Dave Mendicino, either. See you next time.
This weekend, make your way to Casey's Restaurant in North Bay for an unforgettable get-together. Dive into our delicious appetizers and enjoy the best drafts in town. It's the perfect spot to unwind. catch up with friends, and savor great flavors. Don't miss out on the fun. Join us at Casey's for a weekend filled with good food, great drinks, and even better company.